Good morning. Welcome to Courageous Conversations. It's a really beautiful, bright day here in Toronto, and we love the sun in Canada because sometimes we're lacking it. So I'm so excited when we're going into those warmer days, and here it is. Welcome to Courageous Conversations, and today we're going to talk about something pretty intense. So I just want to do a little bit of sharing before we talk about the notion of listening while in a conflict. Is that something that you're doing well, or is it something you're doing out of habit in a way that is from that false self, that ego, listening to respond versus listening to understand. And as we're going into the Easter holidays, Passover holidays, there's going to be some family around, so the triggers are going to be interesting. So I'm going to do a little bit of sharing, and so as we're sharing, let's please join me on the share as well, because of course sharing is caring. And I'm just going to share to my page, Courageous Conversations, and also to a few different pages. I have a couple of different pages that are worthy of a share, and some groups as well. So let's just get going on this interesting topic. Let me just do a quick share, and let's see here. Share on pages I manage. Yes, I will. That's exactly right. So how do you do conflict? How do you do listening? That's the question. Hi, Danny. Nice to see you. How do you do conflict? How do you do listening? How do you find that experience of listening while in conflict experiences? Because a lot of people are, I was motivated and inspired to do this particular live because of what I kept observing in my office while sort of working with different people that are in conflict, couples, partners, these kinds of things. And I just was like, okay, I need to have, people literally have no clue about what it is to listen in a way that's constructive. And I myself, I walk this talk and I struggle with this, and yet I work on it. And I think it's not about knowing the right thing to do, because it's not about being in a place of knowledge. It's first the knowledge, but then it's in a place of practice over and over and over. Because the truth of the matter is that it's just so much easier to want to correct someone. I myself find myself wanting to correct someone who's saying something. Like, when you're in the middle of a conflict, someone's saying something that you just do not agree with. It's incredibly difficult to just stay quiet. They're saying things that are just triggering. So I find that people want to just correct, interrupt, and it doesn't further the cause of the conflict. In fact, the conflict is really, really misserved. The conflict usually will deteriorate and become more ingrained in the problematic dynamic. And so the way out of this is to understand what active listening looks like, and what just being with people looks like, and also being solid within yourself, where you're not as impacted by what other people think, say, or do. You're more grounded within yourself. These are important pieces when you are taking yourself out of the experience of reactivity, reacting constantly. There's such an important, listen, these experiences are here to train us to be more, honest with ourselves, because the true honest being that we are isn't as reactive as you might think. That's the ego responding, the false self responding. But the true self usually wants to listen with empathy, with compassion, with presence, with allowing the other person to say their piece. And I'd like people to access that part of themselves more. is certainly something that I work on myself. And, if you mess up, apologize, but get back on the horse and get into the process of listening from a place that is to understand what the other person's position is. And that doesn't mean that you agree with them, and that doesn't mean that you are just giving in to them. And none of that is what's going on. This is what people get afraid of. If you let the other person say these things, then somehow you are allowing them to get away with whatever it may be, or allowing them to, tell you who you are. Well, no, all of that is you giving them power. So it's not about you giving anybody power. It's about you allowing the other person to be who they need to be in that moment, and listening so that you understand what's happening, what their trigger is, what their hurt is, what their experience is. Again, doesn't mean that you're giving up your power. It simply means that you are creating a safe, sacred space for the two people to experience their authentic truth. And have an intention when you enter a conversation that you are going to be working something out. Have the intention. Write down some of the real feelings, because the truth is no one can tell you how to feel, and you cannot tell them how to feel. You can only start with the I statements. I feel this, and I experience this when you do this. This is what I'm experiencing when you're doing this. And that is not easy. I'm not saying that these are easy concepts. But I will say that the journey toward furthering a more peaceful relating with the people of your life is what you're going to get as a benefit, as a real jewel in this. And the truth of the matter is we've got a lot of family coming up in these next weeks of the holidays, and I want to prepare you for good relating and not be totally, harsh with your, completely I'm saying nothing. I will do not. And that's certainly a temptation to just say, I will say nothing. But maybe you do say nothing as opposed to being engaging in a way that is problematic. Hi, Bernadette. And the problematic is responding in a way that is to answer and, defend. All of those things, we all do it, me included. We all do it, but it's not in any way helpful for the dynamic. I like for people to really work on calming the insides, so that when you're responding, you know that you're not just in a reactive, impulsive, quick way of being. So that you're going, you're just breathing and grounding and allowing your being to be more calm. So it's easier to operate, morning Fernanda, nice to see you. It's easier to operate from the calm part of you. So if you prepare and calm that part of you, it's much harder to calm down when you're already activated, because it's the part of the brain, the limbic system, that is in fight, flight, freeze mode. So when you're already activated, much harder to calm that part of you down. But allowing yourself to begin any kind of a conversation that may get into triggering land from a calmer place, from a deeply breathing, calmer place, you're less likely to be reactive and impulsive and corrective and defensive. And that requires also that you don't crowd your life with too much, because you're sleeping. You need to be taking care of your sleep. You need to be, I have a bunch of guests coming on the weekend, so it's like you want to make sure that I need to make sure that I'm sleeping, that I'm taking care of myself, that I'm eating well, that I'm doing all those things, so that when it comes to the time when the guests are here, the family members are here, that myself or whomever is, we're not halting. Halt, H-A-L-T. It's a 12-step adage. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're any one of those things, you're more likely to be reactive and to correct people and to answer in a way that is to, not to understand what the other person is, but to respond in a way that is just, you're listening to respond versus to understand. And the experience is, incredibly, profoundly difficult. So there's this opportunity. It's an opportunity, I feel, to practice this when the holidays come, and not even just holidays, anytime you're in kind of an experience of a conflict, or even just feeling triggered by the other person, that you're listening to understand where the other person is coming from, not as a way to give up your power, but as a way to experience understanding, communication. This is powerful. And I've heard, and I have felt it myself, that when people start to do that, there's an uncomfortable feeling initially. Yeah, I get that. There's an uncomfortable feeling because it almost feels like you're giving the other person, more airtime than you want them to have. But the truth is that if you want to have healthy relationships, these are the kinds of things that will further a positive environment with that person later on, because then you're not doing damage. Now, the truth of the matter is you definitely want to foster an environment in which both people are listening to understand versus listening to respond. Both people. And that's not always possible. But you're only responsible for yourself. You're only responsible for you, and that's all that matters. And maybe you realize that relationship is something that is, if the other person doesn't agree that they want to have those kinds of rules of engagement, that might not be an intimate relationship. But it doesn't mean you're amputating, because at least you're fostering an environment of healthy interaction. The other thing I just want to address quickly is the notion of empathy. What is empathy? And there are a number of layers of empathy. You first want, when you're listening to understand, you're engaging the part of you that's empathy oriented. And so empathy is, first you want to empathize with the emotions of the other person. But you also want to empathize with the words of the other person, so that you're also doing some active listening in which you are mirroring what they're saying. Oh, I understand that what you're feeling is such and such and such and such where you're just basically speaking from what it is that they are actually bringing to the table. And the opportunity. Hi Shannon, hi Cody, nice to see you guys. Welcome to Courageous Conversations. There is an opportunity at every turn in that interaction to empathize. If you can't empathize with the words, you can possibly empathize with just simply the emotion of the moment. And the emotion of the moment might be that the other person is experiencing frustration, or that the other person is experiencing hurt, or whatever it may be that they're experiencing. You don't necessarily have to empathize the words, but you can empathize with the experience of the other person. Again, this is not giving up your power. This is actually just forging a platform in which two people can sit on a bridge and have a conversation. And it might be a rickety bridge, that's okay, but at least there's a bridge, right? This is such an opportunity, in my opinion. And when the families start to get together with these holidays, this is when people are ill-prepared. Hi, Daniel, nice to see you. Ill-prepared for conflict or trigger, or even just feeling kind of a niggle within you about the other person. There is such, the potential for destruction in relationships when people aren't prepared by being grounded, by being solid within themselves, so that when they encounter family members that are triggering, you don't have to add gasoline to the flames that are already there. You can just literally intend deeply within yourself to be listening for understanding versus listening for response. And response comes later, but the first line of interaction when there's trigger is to go, okay, what's happening over here with this other person? What's actually going on with this other person? Let me understand it, let me empathize with it, and let me also not only understand and empathize, but take the other person in a humanity-oriented way. None of this is easy. None of this is easy. This is actually some of the most challenging stuff in the human experience. But at the same time, even though it's challenging, there's such a reward process that comes after that, in which you go, oh wow, okay, so that, and then listen, let me be really, really real. You might do all of that over the weekend or whatever it may be in any kind of relationship. And you may find, oh, but I didn't get to express my anger or my whatever, my trigger. I just listened. I just was there in an empathetic way. This is not you being, a saint. You may need to, in your journey in communicating this way, you may need to process this with a therapist, with a friend, with a coach, in which you have other pieces of yourself that need to be addressed that would not serve the moment of that interaction, because it would be too triggered and too reactive and too defensive. And you don't want to bring that to the table, especially with family interactions that potentially could be explosive and contentious. So it's all about being skillful and choosing, when you're going to lay out a more reactive part of you, not usually in that moment. It's all about listening. It's all about empathy. It's all about looking to understand. And if there's going to be more, and it's not skillful or useful for that dynamic, bring it to a therapist. Bring it to your journal if you don't have a therapist. Bring it to a trusted friend. That's what I'm talking about. Because the truth of the matter is that you have to understand what your deeper intention is in that relating. Is your deeper intention to further a conflict or to create communication, understanding, and a bridge? And, what I'm all about is how is the next generation, going to experience conflict and relationships. And they're observing you. They're observing the adults. They're observing the people. So you're always in an opportunity for teaching. And this is sometimes a bit of a crunchy subject for people, and I get that. I really, really do. So when you are encountering your family as you go into Easter, Passover, or whatever holidays coming up, bear in mind that you want to be grounded, have enough rest, be whole within yourself, and then from there you want to allow yourself the journey of entering into any kind of a reactivity or defensiveness. Self-regulate, emotionally regulate that piece. And then you have, the learning of what the other person may be experiencing. There's so many amazing opportunities from that way of being. And you have a better holiday. You have a better holiday time or time with family. And take this out of the holiday realm and bring it into the work realm. This works, listening in a way that is to understand the other person. And that requires that you be grounded and not operate from the false self, the ego self. That is the key, not operating from that false ego self that looks to respond, or rather that looks to react, that looks to correct, that looks to defend. That piece of you isn't serving the dynamic at all. All it's doing is furthering a breaking of the bridge between two people. And let me tell you, what are we on this planet to do? We're on this planet to connect. We're on this planet to communicate. We're on this planet to relate to one another. And that's not easy to do it skillfully and healthily. The journey is kind of a hero's journey, the human condition. It's a hero's journey. And so when you enter into those experiences, especially with family, especially with even work colleagues, understand that there is a skill set that you can cultivate that will further the cause of bridge creation versus contention and impulsive reactivity and conflict. So I hope this was helpful. Hi, Francisco. Nice to see you. My lovely uncle from Portugal. And Nicole, I'm so glad you're all joining me or have joined me. This video will be up once the live is done. I'd love you to proliferate it because I think a lot of people can be using this information, and keep having courageous conversations with yourself And keep having courageous conversations with others, because to me, that is the journey of evolving your being, not just stagnating. And remember, relationships are, I think, the richest experience in life, because they are where you'll learn the most, you grow the most. And isolating often doesn't work. It really doesn't. I mean, it may work temporarily, but not long term. All right? So have yourself a fantastic day. Keep having those courageous conversations. If you can, like my page, Courageous Conversations. Another page is Victoria Lorian Fabish, Courageous Conversation. And the other one is join my group, Courageous Conversations. It's a closed group, but it's anybody can join. And it's a safe, sacred space for you to express yourself and feel supported. Have a brilliant day. As I said, it's a beautiful day in Toronto, Canada. Yay! And we're starting to get into we're making it to the other side. We're starting to get into the spring weather. Thank you, thank you. And blessings all around. Take care. All right.